Hi, everyone. Our topic today could potentially be triggering or sensitive to some people, so we wanted to preface this episode with a bit of a disclaimer. We're going to be talking about weight today, how it's impacted our body image, our mental health, etc., and how different outside sources have influenced the way we see ourselves over the years. Everything we say will be drawn from our personal experiences and is by no means a reflection on or recommendation for anyone other than us. This is a tricky topic to tackle, so we wanted to make sure we acknowledged that before diving into the episode, but we didn't want to avoid it because it's something we think and talk about a lot.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Apartment 6 podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Marissa. We're so happy that you tuned in again.
Yeah, episode 3, and we hope that you're hearing us a little better now because we're using microphones that we're pretty excited about. We're hoping that makes the listening experience even better for you. And
it certainly makes the recording experience feel more legit.
It does. And this way we can sit in our living room, which is what we always pictured ourselves doing while recording the podcast, is just like hang out in the living room, talking on the couch. So now we can do that instead of huddling over the desk in my room, trying to control the sound around us as much as possible. But today, the first thing we're going to get into are our roses and thorns. And I'm going to start this off because Marissa's thorn, which is the last thing that we'll get to, it also leads us into our topic today. So I'll start off. My rose is that at work this week, I wrote an article that was dedicated to my mom just in time for Mother's Day. And it was about the 6 best products she's ever recommended to me. And she shared it on Facebook and she got a ton of comments and a ton of likes and a lot of people just being like, your relationship with your daughter is so sweet, and I learned so much about you guys from this article. And one person even was like, I'm gonna buy the salad spinner she recommended. And it just it was really sweet to see her reaction to it and her friends' reaction to it. I would say my thorn is that we just found out that all events in Boston are canceled through and including Labor Day. And while that's not something I wasn't expecting, it's definitely a lot to be sitting early May thinking, oh, okay, this officially will be going through September, regardless of what's going on with the virus, events will be canceled. And I do think that's the right call. It's just really weird to think about because before this, I feel like we have heard things 2 weeks to a month prior, not months prior.
Yeah, so the increments have been smaller.
Right. So it's weird to think like, okay, like no matter what happens, we won't have a typical Boston 4th of July, which includes, the Boston Pops. And, we won't have any parades or, large gatherings in general. And that just really put things into perspective for me in a sad way.
Yeah, definitely. To brighten things up for a sec, my rose this week is that I ordered Shania Twain's classic album Up on vinyl. And it came in this week and it's been so nice to listen to because it's one of the most important albums, I would say, from my childhood. So when I'm thinking about my childhood and looking back to the music that was around me and what made me happy, I mean, there are literally childhood videos of me dancing around the table in our living room singing to this exact album by Shania Twain.
We need to get those on the Instagram.
I know. My mom has them because I told her that I got this album on vinyl and she was like, wow, I have the videos of you as a little kid. So it's just like a really important and special album to me. So I'm happy to have it in this really special version. My thorn, however, is, as Jess said, it's going to lead us into our topic for this whole episode, actually. But specifically, my thorn this week was not the posting itself, but the reaction to the post of Adele's quote-unquote glow up. So if anyone missed it, she posted a picture on Instagram, which she's like never active on Instagram. So first of all, that's a big deal when Adele posts something. But this photo was her thanking people for birthday wishes, and she just so happened to look very different than she did the last time many of us saw her virtually, not actually. We're not like
The
pals.
last time we hung out with Adele, she looked different.
Exactly. Yeah, she just, the post itself was not about this, but in the post she happened to look a lot thinner than she did before. And again, it's not the post itself that's my thorn, because she's allowed to post whatever the heck she wants, and I'm glad she's happy, and I'm glad she got nice birthday wishes and is thanking people. But what bugged me the most was just the reaction to the post, because it was like the hot topic of the day in the media, where everyone was commenting on the post like, wow, you look so different. You look amazing. Congratulations on losing so much weight. And it was like the trending thing on Twitter. It was just everywhere in the media that day. And I just had a really averse reaction to the reaction because I just think that the way that her weight loss was celebrated is really toxic to people who look more like she did before than she does now.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that the reaction didn't surprise me at all, but definitely highlighted once again the inappropriate obsession we have with celebrities' weight, first of all, and their bodies in general, and also society's unhealthy and inappropriate reaction to people's bodies in general and their weight in general. And so we spent a lot of time on whatever day that was.
Yeah, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I can't quite remember, but we spent a lot of time talking about tweets we were seeing about the subject and Instagram posts and we were talking about people's reactions that were both similar to ours and different, and discussing why they might feel that way. And yeah, I think that, Marissa tweeted something about
just my feelings.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact tweet.
Yeah, I can read the tweet out loud.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay. Hold please while I pull up the material on my iPhone. Okay, so I tweeted within I would say 10 minutes of seeing this post and the reaction to it. I just said, my heart goes out to the people who are triggered by the reaction to Adele's weight loss. Celebrating people for getting skinny is extremely toxic and implies that being any degree of overweight is something to be ashamed of. So that's pretty much my take on it, tied in a bow in a nice little tweet.
Right. And so I had quote tweeted that and said this, but also I said, you never know how someone lost weight. It could be intentional and done with care and supervision, but it could also be a passive reaction to an unhealthy mental state or trauma. You don't know how someone got there and whether they want to be celebrated for it. And I did have someone say to me on Twitter, oh, these are two very different takes. And I was taken aback by that because, one, I don't deal well with confrontation at all. I get very nervous, and I do tend to think that if someone comes at me, even I'm not saying that this person was necessarily coming at me, but anytime I'm called out for something, instead of assuming that I'm right and being like, oh, well, I'm right and I'm going to come back at them with this, I always am like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I always assume that I was wrong. And so I took a minute and was sort of like, I'm going to just ask her why. And she was just saying, well, there's a huge difference between saying that being fat or being overweight isn't shameful and saying that the reason that people's reactions were bad is because we don't know how she lost the weight. And I guess to me, these things aren't mutually exclusive.
Right.
I think that it's inappropriate to be commenting on people's weight, regardless of whether they're commenting in a good way or a bad way. And And I also think that if someone does lose weight, and if that's the topic of conversation, that people automatically celebrating it is irresponsible, because we are then we're assuming a lot of things about the way that they lost it. We're assuming this was a good thing and an intentional thing. And in Adele's case, I hope it was, in that she is happy and healthy, and that this is not the result of a trauma or something going on in her life.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us should speculate on that. But I think that in general, my point is that without knowing what exactly we're celebrating, what process we're celebrating, it's irresponsible to celebrate.
Yeah.
And we don't know that they even want attention for their weight at all.
I saw a tweet of someone who was saying, like, I don't understand why some people are so opposed to other people celebrating this, because it's a totally normal thing to happen after a divorce, because Adele went through a divorce. So this person was like, of course we should celebrate it. Like, it's a good thing to come out of a divorce. And I was like, what?
But like, we don't know that the divorce has anything to do with her weight, or that her weight has anything to do with the divorce. I don't.
Yeah, it's like, there are so many things wrong with that, because it's like, they have no right to assume that that's why, and B, they shouldn't even be trying to.
Yeah, but and also, like, who cares?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
if she, like, of course, I'm not saying like we should care about people and care about their well-being. I'm not saying like, oh, Adele's going through a divorce and like no one should give a shit.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, yes, and that's her private business, and like why are we being like, oh, it's okay to celebrate because you know, she's going through a divorce, and like, isn't that so great? And like, it's like, all right, but we don't know Adele. Like, we don't know how she feels about it. We don't know if she wants to be celebrated for her weight, or, you know, a lot of people, I feel like, just don't, like myself included, we just don't really want comments on our weight at all, regardless of whether they're good or bad.
Yeah, because saying that it's a good thing, no matter what, that someone lost weight, is like saying that it was a bad thing that they had more weight on them before.
Exactly.
So whether it's to like me or Jess, who are just normal people, if someone said that to us, we would probably be like, wait, does that mean that you thought I was bigger before, and like you didn't think I was as worthy of compliments? And the same is true for someone so famous like Adele. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. Saying that someone looks so much better now implies, obviously, that they looked worse before.
Right. And by normal people, you mean non-celebrities.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that I can understand how people would disagree with us and say that, you know, we should celebrate it. And here's the thing. If Adele's tweet was about her weight,
Yeah.
that would be or her Instagram post, sorry. That would be a completely different situation.
Totally
if she
agree.
had posted an Instagram saying, you guys, you know, I found out that I needed to lose some weight from a doctor, and I decided to do it in this way that, you know, I'm not prescribing to you, but it worked for me. And it turns out I actually really like this lifestyle, and I'm feeling really great in my body. And if she had made this post telling us about her weight, which she doesn't have to do, that would be one thing. But that wasn't the point. The point of it was just to say, hey, thanks so much for the birthday wishes. Please go support essential workers. They're the real heroes.
Yeah.
Love you all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a completely different situation if she had addressed it, but she didn't. And so I think that alone gave people, that kind of caused like a frenzy, as people were like, what? Like, she didn't even address it. Like, what is going on here?
That's what I mean when I say that, like, her posting it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, she literally just posted a photo of what she looks like in her body right now. That's all she did. And it just is this, like, larger showing of how people view weight loss and how the media views weight, especially with celebrities, but just everybody is affected by this. That we, as a society, saw that photo that had nothing to do from Adele's standpoint with this and turned it into this. It just goes to show you what people's priorities are. And I guess some part of me, like, idealistically thought that during this time, when we've all sort of had this wake up call that, like, globally we're all united in this way with the coronavirus, I mean, and we all need to be, like, supporting each other. I just kind of thought that, like, maybe something would change, that, like, maybe we would just be focused on different things, I guess. Like, she literally, like you said, she thanked essential workers.
Yeah.
And I didn't see, at least when I was scrolling through, a single comment about that. All
Right.
I saw was people commenting about her glow up.
Right, which I'm sure is not what she intended the focus of the post to be, considering she said in the caption, like, thanks so much to the essential workers. They're the real heroes right now. Like, she was quite literally saying,
don't focus on me, focus on them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this was all part of Marissa's thorn, but of course, the reason we harped on it for so long is because it also leads into our larger discussion about weight and body positivity and body confidence. Because while we want to talk about the subject of weight and how it's affected both of us, we also don't want this to be a negative conversation. And I don't think weight has to be a negative conversation. It could be a triggering one, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for both of us, it's a difficult conversation because it's confronting things that we've been dealing with for our whole lives. Like comments we've gotten or just feelings of looking in the mirror and being unhappy. It's confronting every time we've walked into a dressing room and then walked out feeling just crappy. It's definitely not an easy conversation, but we also want to later in the episode talk a little bit about some of the things that have really helped us. And so to start us off, we're just going to talk about sort of the first times we became aware of our weight and sort of our origin story with our weight and with our bodies, which, like most people, starts when we were young.
Which is an Adele song.
When we were young.
I had to do it.
Yeah, that's so weird. I actually didn't plan that, but okay. You had to do it to him.
Had to do it to him. Yeah, I would say my first awareness with my weight started because of my mom and comparing myself to her. So for context, she is very thin. She's not like thin in any sort of unhealthy or worrisome way, but she's just like a thin person. She's not one of those moms that has like a quote unquote like maternal body. Like, she doesn't have like hips or thick thighs or anything like that. She's just very thin.
On your point about that, I feel like a lot of moms, my mom included, will blame their body on their kid. They'll be like, my hips never went back to the way they were before I had you. But I feel like your mom just looks exactly like she did before she ever had a baby.
Totally.
So I think that's like where that comes from, because my mom has said like, oh my gosh, I was way slimmer and I slimmed down after your brother, but for whatever reason, you just like did a number on my body. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I agree. But yeah, so I just ended up shaped a bit differently than her. And I think the biggest thing is that I just didn't inherit the same metabolism as her. I think she just has a great metabolism and I don't. So as a kid, that's especially easy to compare because we ate the same exact meals. So I'd be like, how come we can eat like chicken nuggets a few times a week? And we literally would eat chicken nuggets. She like didn't cook too much when I was growing up.
Chicken nuggets are yummy.
Yeah. But I was like, how can we be eating these same foods that are like not the best for us? And she's so thin and I'm not. So I grew up comparing myself to her. And she also, with all the love in her heart, I know, would comment on my weight a lot as a kid and even through like middle school and high school. I'm a snacker, and if there are snacks,
they call her snacker bracker.
Yeah, you know what? If there are snacks in the house and I like said snacks, I'm probably gonna do some snacking. So I was like that as a kid, and I'm like that now. And when I would snack as a kid, my mom would be like, you might want to watch out of how much you're eating. Or like if I wanted a second slice of cake at someone's party, she'd be like, you might want to watch out for that. Like I guess it was never, looking back, it wasn't like, she never ever said anything derogatory about the way my body was. It was more like, if you do XYZ, you will have to be more worried about what your body will look like. Um but yeah, that was my awareness of my body as a kid. What about you?
Yeah, so the way that I felt about my body was also heavily shaped by my mom. My mom was always curvier, and so was her whole side of the family. And so it was a very normal thing that, we, like the women in my family had bigger hips and bigger butts and bigger busts and things like that. And so it was always something that I was aware of and didn't then feel any type of way about my body as I grew up and started to get curves. Like, when I wasn't surprised when I, was wearing a way bigger bra size than the other girls in my high school, or I guess not every girl in my high school. It's not like I was crazy, but like then some of my, best friends in high school would be like, "Oh, you have like such, big boobs," and whatever, and like say it like a good thing.
Yeah.
And to me, I was just sort of like, yeah, well, that's my genes. But my mom would make comments never about my body, but about her own body. So I remember one time my mom went to the doctor, where of course they weigh you, and she came home and was like, "Oh, like I'm so disgusted with this number, and this is the heaviest I've been in my life, and I can tell. Look at this, look at that. Like I don't like the way it wears on me." And at the time, I was like a small child, and so I was still growing, so weight was sort of arbitrary, aside from like my doctor being like, yeah, you're in your your bracket of whatever you're supposed to be at your age, but other than that, it doesn't really mean much because it's always going to change. And when I got to college and hit that weight that she had mentioned being disgusted with years earlier, I was like, oh, should I feel bad about this? Is this a bad thing that I hit this number? And of course, I'm not going to say numbers, not only because it's also my mom's personal business, but because I think numbers are a triggering thing for people and they really don't matter.
Right.
But I just remember thinking, well, that's weird because, she really didn't like this number on her. But like, I don't think that I look bad. I think I look good. Okay. Like, and it was sort of sitting with that, and that was sort of when I really became aware of the fact that it wasn't bullcrap when people would say, sorry, bullcrap is a really weird word, but it really does mean something when people say no weight is going to look the same on two people, because it's my mother, and like we have somewhat similar body types in terms of we're a little bit curvy in some places, and she has her spine dips like really she has a really deep dip where her spine is, and like I have that too, like really like just similar things in that way that I've noticed. Clothes tend to fit us similarly, but we still looked completely different at those weights. But it caused me to think about that and to think, oh, should I feel bad about myself? And I've talked to my mom about this, and she was like, no, I think you look great. Like, I think you look totally healthy. And my doctor says that I look healthy. And, so she's like, no, like I don't base yourself off of me. But when you grow up hearing your mother make certain comments about herself, you're then comparing yourself to her and saying, oh, well, I wonder if she thinks those things about me. And of course she didn't, because she's my mom and she thinks that I'm beautiful, and we love her for that. But it is interesting when your role model is speaking badly about themselves, and you are looking up to them, and you're like, oh, but I don't see those things. Will other people see them on me?
And on the flip side, I would say I didn't really have a body role model as a kid, if that makes sense. Because it wasn't like my mom just, her body type just seemed so unattainable to me that it wasn't even like, oh, we have like a similar body type, but like you know, hers is just a little bit leaner than mine. It was like, I just grew up being like, my mom is the most beautiful woman on the face of the earth, and I will never, ever be her.
Oh.
And that's the truth. That is really the truth.
Have you ever talked to her about this?
No. I just dramatically spoke into the microphone.
Your face just went deadpan. No.
Well, because like now it's not like we're living together. It's not like I'm living with her anymore. So when we talk to each other, there are way more important things to talk about. And also, she doesn't see what's in my cupboard. She doesn't see what I've been snacking.
I was going to say, I imagine that there's no longer comments about like, hey, you've been snacking out. Like and also even when you were home, like for the brief period of time between like college and moving here, you were a vegetarian. And so for the first time, like it was the first time you were going home as a vegetarian. So you were making all your own meals and also because you'd grown your taste was different.
Yeah. Cause I feel like as a kid, the comments would be because she would like buy a bag of Doritos, say, for the week for the family. And then, so this is like Sunday, she buys the bag. Then like, you know, like Tuesday, Wednesday, they're gone because I ate them. And she's like, where'd the bag of Doritos go? And then I'm like,
check the trash, Mom.
I don't know.
I remember like when my mom would go food shopping and it's like she would buy enough snacks, you know, for the week, but for whatever reason on those first couple days, and I feel like I'm still like this, I'm like, oh, I have to eat a little bit of every single one. It's insane.
But yeah, so since that was how it was as a kid, it's like since I had my own snacks, because it wasn't just that I was not eating meat, it was also that I was eating these like kind of more like niche health snacks. Like I wasn't really buying Doritos for myself. I was buying like Hippies or whatever kind of more natural snack. So she wasn't really interested in those anyway. So it was just like my eating was very independent from her at the time, whereas when I was a kid, obviously it was very dependent on her. So that was a huge difference. But yeah, it's not something we ever talk about now.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up specifically like shame around food, because shame around food is it's like a branched out version of this topic. And I think that shame around food is really something that I'm still trying to come out of, because it connects so heavily with how I view my body. If you eat really healthy, and I'm going to put quotes around healthy, and you look in the mirror, you might feel differently than if you ate quote unquote junk food and then look in the mirror, even if your body looks the exact same. And one thing that really I'm still learning, and I think I've gotten better about, is not assigning good and bad to food, and not thinking of food as bad for you and good for you, or thinking of food as rewards or punishments. Rewards and punishments is probably a better way to say it than good and bad. Because I'm not talking about nutrition value here. I'm talking specifically about the way that you assign food to yourself. And you say, well, you deserve a treat. So you get a cookie. And then you say, you ate a cookie and you didn't go to the gym. So you're only going to have salad for lunch tomorrow. And that is really damaging. And it's also creating a very complex stigma around food. And I had a friend who taught me, you know, food is supposed to nourish you and is supposed to keep you alive. It's not, of course, we've created, there are companies out there that are creating food that is supposed to be, like, put it this way, there's cereals like Raisin Bran, there are cereals like Cookie Crisp. So like obviously it's not like our fault that certain foods have been thought of as like a reward and as a punishment.
Yeah.
But it is interesting when you take that power away. And when I was little, I remember everyone in my family, and I'm talking like my nuclear family and my extended family, would make fun of me at holidays because I would always be the first one to be like, can we have dessert now? Like as soon as we would finish, because that's how I am. As soon as I finish eating like my savory thing, I want my sweet.
Yeah, definitely.
A meal doesn't feel over to me until we have dessert. And I remember, people in my family making comments about it, and it made me feel small, and it made me feel small in terms of like shame.
Yeah,
but
like
it made me
dignity.
feel big in terms of
size.
It made me feel like, well, is there something wrong with me wanting that? And they made fun. And see, the thing is, I don't think any of them are listening to this, but if they were, they'd be like, oh, she was always so sensitive, because I was very sensitive. But that's also something that there's a lot of shame around sensitivity. And I don't stand for that because I am a triple water sign and it's not my fault. And I get that they didn't necessarily mean anything by it, but it's those things. It's my cousins making comments to me.
Yeah.
It's your mom making
Comments
to you that stick with you. Like there's a reason why we still remember it,
Yeah, and like this is a whole separate, this is a branch as well. But I just like, I do have empathy for a parent who their child is beginning to be overweight and they're really not sure what to do about it from a health standpoint. Like it shouldn't have anything to do with what they're going to look like, but I totally understand a parent being concerned that their child is starting to go towards a path of like an unhealthy lifestyle, or that they'll, this is like way down the road of their child growing up, but that they could encounter, health issues and have like cardiac issues and all these things as an adult, because those habits start as a kid. So I don't know, maybe this is like me wanting to cover my bases in case my mom decides to listen to this episode, but like I think it's definitely a tough thing to do, to be a parent and see your kids' eating habits and want to steer them in a healthy direction.
Yeah, well, if their pediatrician is saying, they're really not getting enough of this, or they're getting too much of this. Like I remember that I was always calcium deficient.
You know what's so funny about you bringing that up? I was just thinking the other day, because I was eating cheese. I was like, okay, because I have like slices of cheese in the fridge, and I've been like putting them on vegetables sometimes to like spice things up.
Sometimes I love just like popping a slice of cheese.
Yeah, well, so when I was a kid, I also always had a calcium deficiency, which is funny that you did too. Yeah. So growing up, my mom would give me cheese as like something I needed to have. Like she'd be like, here, have a slice of cheese, you need it. And I'd be like, okay. And then I grew up and I found out that like it's actually not that great to have that much cheese.
Yeah.
Like it's not, like it's kind of a treat for people to have cheese. It's not like a health food.
Right. Well, it's definitely like, I don't know. I think you're supposed to meet a calcium deficiency with either some sort of like supplement, which is what my doctor made me take, or like things like milk and yogurt.
My supplement was just slices of cheese.
But it's like American cheese.
I love that.
I remember at Market Basket, you would go up to the deli and they would hand you a slice of cheese.
Yes.
And like, oh my gosh. Yep. So there's just nothing like having a slice of cheese, Okay, anyway.
I just mean like there are legitimate reasons sometimes for wanting to, I guess, restrict or limit the unhealthy food that your child is eating. I get that. But I think it's important to remember that that's going to stick with them. Clearly it stuck with us because we remember those comments and it's shaped the way we think about food to this day.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I'm not a mom, I'm not a parent. I don't know what the answers are, and it's certainly a lot easier to sit here in my cozy apartment and speculate on parenting than it is to actually be a parent. But yeah, I don't know. There is some validity to just wanting your child to be healthy, I guess. Like I get that.
Yeah. So moving on from childhood, what are some of your memories from things like middle school, high school, when you were still developing? Obviously all through childhood we're growing, but your you're really more aware of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you're starting to dress yourself, and, you know, you're starting to be more aware of your friends and what they look like and what kind of clothes they're wearing and how things look on them. Like, what are some of your memories from like middle school, high school?
I think that those are the times that started my connection between weight and attractiveness
Mm.
to boys I liked. I think that middle school and high school those were the times that I was like having my first real crushes, and I was seeing these popular girls who mostly were very lean, small boned, small chested. The popular girls tended to be that sort of body type, and the boys I liked would flock to them.
Mm.
And so that's sort of when my little middle school brain began to connect the dots and say, well, a huge difference between me and those girls is the way we look and our weight. And I think that the reason this boy doesn't like me back is because I weigh more than those other girls.
Mm.
And that's for sure when that started, like middle school. And I still feel that way, honestly.
Yeah. Do you think you ever felt any of that in elementary school?
I don't think so, because in elementary school, I feel like everybody looked different like weekly.
That's true.
Like, and honestly, it's kind of funny the way that my body like formed. It's a weird way to say it, but like
It morphed.
yeah, I was actually really tall when I was a kid. Like
Me
I
too.
was the tallest in the class, and now like I think I'm like 5'3". I'm not tall, but I'm not like that short. But in elementary school, I was tall. Like I was one of the tall kids. And also I got boobs like way before anyone else did. So it's just, but like everyone was sort of sprouting things at different times.
Sprouted things. I'm sorry.
You
The
know?
visual of that is so interesting.
But I think that like it so much was happening at that time that no one was constant enough for me to compare myself to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I remember in my 3rd grade picture day photo, I like had like what I referred to at the time as like baby fat on me, and in 4th grade, that photo I looked like really slim. Like your body is changing so much at that age. I would say that for me, I actually did start experiencing like I made the connection between attractiveness and weight even younger, and it was because I befriended these 2 girls, and I remember they came over my house and we were swimming in my pool, and our moms were sitting on our back deck, and I remember going up to my house or going to the deck to, I don't know, get water, get a snack, just take a break from the pool, like something like that. And I overheard a conversation where our moms were talking about our different sizes. Like they were talking about like, oh, so-and-so is wearing, you know, this size now at Gymboree, and, you know, she weighs about this. And I don't really know why they were talking about it. I think they were literally just talking about like where they shop for us and whatever. And I remember that the 2 other girls were about the same size, and I was wearing like a size 12 kids or something, and they were wearing, you know, say like a size 6. It's now weird because I actually realized that like, you know how like there's you're on like evens when you're little,
Yeah.
and then in juniors you're on odds, and now we're back to evens.
Yeah.
So it was like a size 12 in kids when they were say like a size 6 in kids or something like that. And I was like, oh. And I felt embarrassed, and that was in 3rd grade.
Wow.
So I think that, and they were like, they both, you know, had blonde hair and, you know, were petite, and they both did really well at sports. And I remember thinking, well, I'm brunette, I'm chubbier than them, and I'm not as athletic. So like, there's a reason, like they always liked each other more than they liked me. And that really put a lot of validity to it in my mind.
Yeah, I actually had a similar experience when I was a little bit older. I think I was starting to be friends with these people in like freshman year of high school. I had these friends where 2 of them had been best friends since they were kids, and they were also of really similar body types and interests, and they just like were way more similar to each other than I was to them. And I totally remember being like, I feel like I'm on the outs, and it's not because of anything I'm doing or saying. It's just because as a person, I'm different than them.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I would say in middle school, I felt pretty average in terms of like my size.
Well, you also played a sport.
I did.
So that's kind of an interesting factor. I feel like automatically, if you play a sport, people at least know that you're like moving your body, and they probably assume that you're healthier.
Yeah, that's probably true. I would say soccer in my town was the thing, and I didn't know a girl or a guy who wasn't playing soccer. At the time, that's what it felt like. And like all of the popular people played, and I was on the D team. There were only 4 teams, A, B, C, D, and I was on the D team. At one point, there might have been 5, and I was on the E team. And so even though at the time I was moving my body more, I don't think I thought of it that way, because I think I thought, well, they think that I don't work as hard at practice, which is also probably true, because I'm pretty sure at some of their practices, they had to run a mile or something like that. And like, we were like 12, and my dad was my coach, and my dad was like, I'm not making you guys run a mile. You're here to have fun. Like, let's go scrimmage.
Amazing.
And like, we would run drills, and then we would scrimmage, whereas they might like start their practice with a mile. I remember there was one day where my dad and I couldn't go to practice. And so our assistant coach ran practice, and he made them run a mile, and everyone like complained to my dad. And my dad came back and was like, no more running. And which is so funny, because we were a soccer team, but
I love that.
But it's just, yeah. So I think that I even though I was moving and, I was dancing and things like that, I didn't necessarily give myself that credit, even though now I would probably feel really high and mighty about myself if I was going to soccer practice twice a week.
Yeah.
Moving my body. But yeah, and so high school, I felt okay about my body. I always compared myself to my best friend, but we just had very different body types, and I think in some ways she appreciated mine more than hers, and I appreciated hers more than mine, so it was sort of a healthy balance.
That's exactly how it was with my best friend and I in high school.
Yeah.
To a T.
Yeah.
Like, we used to joke that she had like a boy's body. I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, because I'm not saying her name or anything. She used to just say that she had a boy's body because she's like way more lanky than I am, so she has like long limbs, and she's just like thinner overall, and she doesn't really have like, the hourglass or whatever. Like, she's not a curvy person. She's more like straight lined. And I am a curvy person. So yeah, we used to joke about that. But I would definitely compare myself to her, just like I would compare myself to my mom. It's kind of unfortunate that growing up, I would say those were the 2 most influential women that I was looking at, even though it's weird to say that when like one of them was my peer and my age, but like they were my 2 biggest influences in the way that I saw myself, and they were the biggest people I was comparing myself to. So it's kind of unfortunate that they both had totally different body shapes than me, because it wasn't valid at all to be comparing myself to them.
Right.
There's nothing to compare it to.
Right. Yeah, and at the time, it wasn't as easy to find role models or like find representation, I guess is a better way to say it, on the internet.
Yeah, so like that's something we really wanted to mention today, because we don't have all the answers in terms of how to talk about things from a health standpoint, or actually talk about what weight means for different people, but all we can talk about is what makes an impact on us. So I think we've talked a little bit about what's made an impact on us in our personal lives, like growing up, and the people around us and the things that we did. But I think the other major thing that we wanted to talk about is not the people physically around us, but the people on our screens in the media and social media. So, first of all, I think it goes without saying that social media can be a bad influence on the way that you see your body because I feel like a lot of the trends in clothing and style and like aesthetics tend to be geared towards people of a certain body type.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there was a time where bandeau tops were really popular. And if you had a big chest, you could not wear a bandeau top.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, clothes are geared towards, quote, standard sized bodies.
Right.
And then within that, there have been phases where it's geared towards people who have smaller chests, like the bralette craze of 2016.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember how hard I worked to find a bralette?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to there was nothing that I wanted more than to just wear a bralette. Because you know what a bralette meant for me? It meant effortlessness.
Mm-hmm.
It meant not having to try to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
It meant, oh, I'm just going to throw this on and like, look how pretty and lacy it is. And look how effortlessly cool it looks under my tank top. And I could not do that without hurting my body because I would put one on, right? And it would pull at my neck.
Yeah.
And I would be so uncomfortable, but I'd be like, but I look like the other girls. But you know what? I didn't even because it didn't even hold up my boobs.
Yeah, in a very physical way, that's the perfect example of a trend that is geared toward a certain body type.
Right.
Because in a very, very physical way, the style of this bralette trend could not, given that we live with gravity, could not contain larger chests. Like it physically could not hold them up. So that's just like a very relevant example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, totally. That was a trying time. And I'm laughing as I'm saying this. I'm not being completely serious. I mean, I am serious in the fact that like I think a bralette really like represented something for me that was unattainable. But I'm laughing because it's not that deep, honestly. I think that there are even bigger issues within this subject about the way that clothing is geared towards genders. I think there are bigger issues in terms of the way clothing is made to fit certain body types.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of representation in store and online is incredibly saddening.
I mean, look at a store like Brandy Melville.
Right.
That carries clothes that say one size fits all.
Right.
And often absolutely do not fit all sizes.
Yeah. And therefore they are not showing models with different sizes. And there's no representation there. But you know what? That is another store that I wanted so badly to fit into.
Yeah.
And I know we both bought stuff from them. And then I don't think I own anything from them anymore because it's all been decluttered. Why? Because it never fit right in the first place. And at a certain point, you get sick of not feeling good when you put something on and you say, oh my God, fuck it. I'm just going to buy, a regular bra, or I'm just going to wear a t-shirt that actually has, like a tag that says M or L in it, or, whatever it be for you.
Mm-hmm. So we've both seen unattainable things on social media. We've both had our social media feed be cluttered with people that we don't really identify with, and people where if we tried to go get that same outfit, it wouldn't fit us or it wouldn't feel right on us. And I think we've both realized that the more cluttered our feeds are with those types of people, the less comfortable we feel in our bodies.
Yes.
But on the flip side, I think that the thing I'm the most grateful for, which this goes back to how I felt like I didn't have role models of my own body type as a kid. I think the thing that's helped us the most now is finding those role models on social media. So people that have more similar body types to us, or fall in a similar place to us on like the standard size, mid-size, plus size scale. But also beyond the physicality of it, also just the way that they speak about their bodies and other people's bodies. So it's not just about what they look like, but it's also about the way that they're talking about their body. Like, it was extremely powerful for me to see someone who other people might have considered bigger or overweight or whatever say that they felt their body was beautiful. That's so powerful.
Yeah, totally. So we wanted to name drop a few people, actually, because we think it's that important that we literally tell you who has made us feel good. And in case you're looking for someone who can help you feel good about yourself. So there's two parts to this. I think that if you're seeing a lot of people in your feed that don't look like you, in terms of, you know, you're seeing people that make you feel bad about yourself or that make you feel like you're supposed to be different than who you are, I would say you can do one of two things. First of all, you should unfollow those people if they don't need your follow. Like, it's okay if you unfollow, social media influencers who you feel like make you feel any type of way that's negative.
Yeah, and I just want to say there's a huge difference between unfollowing them and commenting hate on their posts.
Yeah.
Like, there's a huge difference between turning against someone who is skinnier than you and commenting on their photos and saying you shouldn't be posting or whatever it is, like commenting any sort of negativity on their posts. There's a huge difference between that and just turning them off your feed.
Right, because it's equally not okay to be commenting on people's thinness.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's not, and I feel like that's something we didn't touch a ton on in this podcast, just because honestly we're running out of time. But this works both ways. Like, not only do we think that people should not be commenting on people being overweight, but we don't think people should be commenting on people being underweight unless it's literally like, if you were concerned about someone and you know them personally and you can find a safe and constructive way to engage them in a conversation about it, then okay. But, we're not even going to get into that because that's a whole other conversation. But first of all, you should unfollow people. And then you kind of have two options. I think one of them is filling your feed with people who look like you. So people who maybe wear clothes that you enjoy. So like shop at your places that you like.
And we're saying look like you just in terms of weight, by the way.
Yes.
In shape and body shape, not anything else about a person.
Right. Like finding people who you see as representation.
Yeah, like kindred spirits.
Yeah, sure.
Just like you identify with them.
Yeah, and following them and having your feed filled with people who make you feel validated in your existence, that make you feel like you don't need to change a thing because you don't. And the other thing you can do, and maybe this is like a second step, once you sort of declutter your feed and you bring in people who you feel give you, who fill you with joy and who make you feel happy in your body. Once you are at that point, I would also recommend diversifying your feed. So finding people who don't just look like you in terms of their body type and shape, but finding people who are smaller than you, bigger than you, whatever it is. I just think that diversifying your feed gets you more comfortable with the idea that like, it's okay. Like, we're all different. We were all made differently. We all are going to be a different shape, a different size. We're all going to feel differently about our bodies and be in different places mentally with our bodies, and that's okay. But yeah, like Marissa said, I think that we should be finding people who first and foremost speak about their body in a way that you hope to speak about yours, even if you're not there yet. And a few of those people for us are, one, Sierra Schultzy.
Mm-hmm.
She is a YouTuber that I introduced Marissa to probably like a year ago.
Yeah.
I found her because she was doing mid-sized body confidence videos. I think that's like the best way to describe it. So she was going to different stores and trying on whatever size she thinks she was in that store and just showing how every store has a different way of going about sizing, and it just proves to you that, you know, sizes aren't a measurement of like they're an inaccurate measurement, because you can be a different size in every store. And she speaks a lot about her body confidence journey, and she's been really, really helpful and great to us.
Yeah, she's been a super positive influence, because she's someone I was thinking of when I said earlier, like, it was so powerful for me to hear someone who was more similar to my body than a lot of social media influencers are, to hear someone like her say, I'm beautiful the way I am. I love the way I am. I wouldn't change anything about myself. I wear clothes that make me feel beautiful, and I can find them if I follow my own style instead of trying to fit into trends that aren't made for everybody. Yeah, she's just somebody that has been such a positive influence to see on social media. And she's friends with our second recommendation for this person's also a YouTuber. Her name is Carrie Dayton. And Jess also introduced me to her. How would you describe her content?
Carrie is so funny and relatable and just sweet. She started as a storytime YouTuber. And I think what is really unique about Carrie is that she's been on YouTube for long enough. And actually, this is true of Sierra too, but for whatever reason, it stands out to me with Carrie, because I feel like she's addressed it more and she gets more comments like this. She started YouTube at a time where she was thinner, but she was dealing with some disordered eating. And when she finally started eating healthier and caring more about her mental state, this is in her words, by the way, she gained weight and got comments about people being like, I liked you better when you were skinnier. And she's really head on addressed those comments and really talked about the implications of saying things like that to someone. And his address, you know, you have no idea what I was doing and what my habits were when I was quote unquote skinnier. And you have no idea that I was actually very unhealthy, and I am the healthiest I am now. And I'm now larger, and I don't need to apologize for that. And she just unapologetically is herself. She makes similar videos to Sierra in terms of like going to different stores and trying on clothing, and just showing that sizing is inaccurate, the system is inaccurate, and that we don't have to give in to crap like that. We don't have to leave a dressing room feeling extremely defeated. But she's also really honest on days that she doesn't feel super positive about her body. And I think that I also appreciate that, because I have days where I'm not positive about my body, or I'm angry at my body for some reason.
Yeah, but I feel like what's great about Carrie is that when she does make comments like that, it's always phrased like, I feel like this today.
Yes. Yeah, it's always very temporary and saying like, and it's okay that I feel like this today.
Which is so different than if she was like making a blanket statement like, my body is ugly, or my body is not worthy, or my body is blah, blah, blah.
Right.
There's a huge difference between making a statement like that and saying, I don't feel good about it today.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just think that she is just very graceful, and I just appreciate her. Sierra is, I believe, 24 and Carrie's 32. So it's also interesting, like they're friends, and it's interesting how they talk about their different walks in life. And, you know, Carrie has like a very youthful style to her. And I love that she is 32 and is like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to wear what I want to wear. And, you know, at this age, this is what my body looks like. When I was this age, it looked like that. Like she has even more years under her belt where she can sort of reflect back on how she used to treat herself and her body. And I appreciate that experience.
Yeah, and the third person I want to shout out, her name is Lucy Wood. She doesn't make such targeted weight and clothing and size content as Sierra and Carrie do, but her body is very quote unquote average. Like she's an influencer who has a very attainable body, if that makes sense. Like she doesn't look like she's stick thin or whatever. I don't know how to describe it, but she just like has an average body, and she's talked about herself that way as like, I'm the average woman or whatever. And I think it's interesting that all three of those women have long-term boyfriends, and in Sierra's case it's a husband. But it's interesting for me thinking about that because, like I said before, I always associate weight with attractiveness. And it's just nice not only to see them feel beautiful and talk about their bodies in a way that is beautiful and is positive. It's also nice to know that it's like, oh yeah, like you can be in a healthy, loving relationship with someone who's attracted to you at whatever weight you are. You don't have to be stick thin to have someone be attracted to you and fall in love with you. So
Yeah.
they're good reminders of that too.
Yeah. And someone doesn't have to look just like you for you to be attracted to them and for them to be attracted to you.
Yeah.
That sort of just goes back to the thought of diversifying your feed.
Mm-hmm.
Once you find people that you feel like do represent you and how you feel about yourself and your journey, or how you want to feel about it, then taking that step to just open yourself up to like there are other people with other bodies and we can all accept each other, and I don't need to put myself in a bubble of people that look just like me in order to feel good about myself. I can healthily compare myself to people. I can see someone and recognize that they're beautiful and that so am I. Yeah.
And I think the way you get there is by seeing other people of different body types talk about themselves that way. So that's why it sort of goes in that order where like you detoxify your feed and take away the things that are draining to your mental health, and you add in the things that make you feel good. You add those first so that you're in a more stable mindset to then start adding people who look a little different. That way, when you get to that point, you've established a lot more like love for yourself than you had before.
Yeah. At least this is what has worked for us. Of course,
yes,
you might be like, what?
Yeah,
That's totally fine too.
I think that we definitely want to like keep reiterating that there are so many branches of this topic. We've like barely scratched the surface of this. And we are not professionals. Like we're by no means able to impart any medical advice or any sort of advice like that. We are solely speaking from our perspectives and our experiences. And I'm sure we've said some things that maybe we worded a little differently than we wanted to. This is just like an endless conversation that can never be perfectly tied up in a bow, because I think everyone's body image and body confidence journeys are like a roller coaster with endless loops.
Yeah, I think that I'm already starting, now that we're at the end of the episode, to reflect back and be like, oh my gosh, did I say that right? Did I say it how I meant it? And that this is a hard subject. It's a hard subject for us to talk about, because there is so much to it. And I never want people to listen to this podcast and then be like, well, now I feel, insert negative emotion. I want what we talk about to resonate with you. And, this is just a little bit, this is a snippet into a conversation between me and Marissa. That's what the whole podcast is. So obviously, today we focused on weight and body confidence, but there's even more as we started to talk about, how our families related to our weight, how we started to talk about romantic relationships and weight. We talked a little bit about food shame. There's so much in dieting, all things like that. They're all different branches off of this, and we're truly just skimming the surface. And, we hope that you took something out of this, or that, it was just pleasant to listen to two people be honest with each other and with themselves about where they're at with their weight. And we hope that, that you took something out of this, or that it got you thinking. We are totally aware that we are not professionals. And this is a topic that I think we'd both be open to talking about again and diving into one more niche aspect of it instead of sort of skimming the surface like we did today. Right. I know that both of us are holding back like some stories that we have. I know that like there are parts of this that I intended to say today and we just ran out of, or parts of this conversation that I intended on elaborating more on and I didn't get to. And I think that would also inform how I talk about this, but we're not there yet today.
Yeah, I think that in general, we've gotten some feedback that people do get this out of the podcast, which is great. I think we just want this to feel like you're sitting down and having conversations with us. And we'd be lying if we said that this wasn't a conversation we have a lot. Right. So since this is a topic that we would be talking about regardless of if we had a podcast or not, we're sure that other people are, sitting with their friends and their roommates and having this conversation. Because I think it's most important not to erase the topic. Because it's important to know that everybody's thinking about body image. And that if you are feeling negatively, you're not the only one by any means.
Right.
So if anything, we hope that this made you feel at least less alone, but at most a tiny bit more positive about your body. That would be awesome if you left this feeling any better. But if not, we at least hope that you were entertained or thought this was interesting to hear.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to us just chat. And we hope that you'll tune in next week too.